The raindrops tapped a frantic rhythm against the window pane. I rubbed my knee, a dull ache blooming into a sharp throb, and slowly pushed myself up from the sofa. This damn joint, it screamed like a nest of needles every time a storm rolled in, more reliable than any weather forecast. I limped to the window, staring out at the gunmetal gray sky. It had been raining for 3 straight days, and my knee had been complaining for just as long. Yesterday, the pain had become unbearable, so I had taken my cane and made the trip to the local clinic. The doctor, a young man who couldn't have been much older than 30, frowned as he looked at my x-rays. "Eleanor," he said, his expression serious, "the cartilage in your knee is severely worn down. You need a replacement surgery. You can't put this off any longer." "How much?" It was the only question that mattered. "With imported materials, you're looking at around $40,000. The young doctor adjusted his glasses. "Do you have any children? It would be best to discuss this with them." $40,000. The number had been spinning in my head all day. My monthly Social Security check was $1,500. After paying for my medications and groceries, I was lucky to save $100. My son Gregory made well over $300,000 a year, but ever since he married Victoria, it was like he had become a different person. He sent me $500 a month, a sum that felt more like a handout to a beggar, and I usually had to listen to Victoria's passive-aggressive comments about how high the cost of living was and how tight things were for them. I sighed, picking up the doctor's report from the coffee table. He was right. The surgery couldn't wait. Steeling myself, I decided I would go to my son's house today. I put on my most presentable coat, a navy blue one, and tucked the report and x-rays into a plastic grocery bag. I slipped my bus pass and keys into my wallet. Before leaving, I checked my reflection in the hall mirror, patting down my hair. At 78, there was no hiding the white, but I could at least make sure it was neat. I couldn't embarrass my son. The rain was heavier than I'd expected. My cheap umbrella was no match for the downpour, and by the time I was waiting for the bus, my pant legs and cloth shoes were soaked through. The number 22 bus finally arrived with a groan of its brakes. I struggled up the steps and tapped my senior pass. "Hey, Eleanor, off to see your son?" The driver, an older man named Sal, called out. I managed a weak smile. "Yes, just a small matter." The air conditioning on the bus was blasting, and the cold made me shiver, intensifying the sharp pain in my knee. I counted the stops, getting off at Summit Creek Estates, one of the most expensive developments in the city. Gregory's building was the one overlooking the lake. The doorman recognized me but still made me sign in at the front desk. Standing in the gilded elevator, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. Old, haggard, and dressed in shabby clothes, a complete mismatch for the luxurious surroundings. The elevator stopped at the 28th floor. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Nearly a minute passed before the door cracked open, revealing Victoria's face, covered in a shimmering green face mask. "Mom?" She was clearly startled. "Why didn't you call first?" The question hung in the air, making me feel deeply embarrassed as I stood on their doorstep, rainwater dripping from my coat onto their polished marble floor. Victoria reluctantly opened the door wider. "Come in." I just finished a treatment and was about to wash my face. I stepped inside cautiously, terrified of getting their plush leather sofa wet. Victoria had already disappeared into the bathroom, leaving me to stand awkwardly in the middle of the living room. On the wall hung a massive, professionally shot portrait of their family of 3. Gregory looked sharp in a tailored suit. Victoria was elegant in a white dress, and my granddaughter, Clara, smiled like a little princess. Next to it were photos from their vacation to the Maldives last year, blue skies and white sand, a display of wealth that was almost blinding. "Just have a seat, Mom. Gregory isn't home from work yet," Victoria called out from the bathroom. She emerged a moment later, the mask gone, revealing a face that was meticulously cared for. She was 45, but could have passed for 30. I perched on the very edge of the sofa and pulled the doctor's report from my plastic bag. "Victoria, I went to the clinic today. The doctor said my knee." "Mom," Victoria interrupted, glancing at her phone, "my yoga class is about to start. I'm running late. Whatever it is, you can talk to Gregory about it when he gets home." She turned and walked into the bedroom, leaving me alone again. My knee was throbbing worse than ever, but I didn't dare move around their pristine apartment. I just sat there, stiff and waiting. About half an hour later, I heard a key in the lock. Gregory walked in and flinched when he saw me. "Mom? What are you doing here?" I tried to stand, but a sharp, stabbing pain shot through my knee, and I nearly fell. Gregory instinctively reached out to steady me. I could smell the faint scent of cologne on him and saw the gleaming watch on his wrist, the one Victoria had given him for his birthday last year. It had supposedly cost over $15,000. "Greg, your mom's been waiting for you," Victoria said, emerging from the bedroom dressed in yoga pants. "She has something to discuss with you." I quickly handed the report to my son. "Gregory, the doctor says I need a knee replacement surgery. It costs $40,000. Gregory took the report and scanned it, his brow furrowing. "It's that serious?" "Yes, it's been hurting for a long time," I said, my voice timid. "The doctor said if I don't have the surgery, I might not be able to walk at all." Gregory sighed and looked at Victoria. "Honey, look." Victoria was applying hand cream, not even bothering to look up. "Mom, you're at an age where, what's the difference if you get it treated or not?" I froze, unable to believe what I had just heard. "Victoria, I just want to be able to walk on my own, to not be a burden to you." $40,000 is not a small amount, Victoria said, finally raising her head, her eyes cold as ice. "Clara is about to study abroad. Her tuition alone is $60,000 a year. We're under a lot of pressure." I turned to my son. "Gregory, I've never asked you for anything in my entire life." Gregory avoided my gaze. "Mom, Victoria handles all the finances. You make over $300,000 a year." My voice trembled. "It's just $40,000. Please, save my leg." Victoria let out a cold laugh. "Mom, you make it sound like we're not good children. Don't we give you $500 every month?" Most elderly people don't get that much. Suddenly, a searing pain shot through my knee, and I couldn't stand any longer. With a soft thud, my legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor. "Gregory, I'm begging you," I sobbed, tears blurring my vision. "I can't stand the pain anymore." Through my tears, I saw Gregory take a step back. Victoria crossed her legs and began to file her nails. "Mom, don't be like this," Gregory said, his voice laced with annoyance. "It's so embarrassing if someone sees." Just then, the doorbell rang. Victoria frowned and went to open it. Our neighbor, Marge, was standing outside. "Oh, Victoria, I just need to borrow a cup of sugar." "Oh my goodness, Eleanor. What are you doing on the floor?" The atmosphere in the room turned instantly to ice. Victoria's face went pale, and Gregory rushed to help me up, but I had already used the coffee table to pull myself to my feet. "It's nothing, Marge. My mom's leg was just acting up," Gregory explained with a strained laugh. Marge gave the three of us a suspicious look before taking the sugar and leaving. But I knew that by tomorrow, the story of how Gregory Jensen, the man with the six-figure salary, let his own mother collapse at his feet would be all over the neighborhood. "Mom, look what you've done." Victoria's voice was shrill. "Now the whole building will know our business." I wiped away my tears and picked up my plastic bag. "I'm sorry, I've disturbed you. I'll go now." Gregory followed me to the door and tried to press $100 into my hand. "Mom, take a cab home. We'll discuss the surgery later." I didn't take his money. I turned and walked toward the elevator. Behind me, I heard Victoria's sharp voice. "Discuss what? Is that broken leg of hers worth $40,000? Even if you fix it, how many more years does she have left?" The moment the elevator doors closed, I finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. 30 years ago, my husband died in a car crash. I raised Gregory all by myself, working in a factory during the day and sewing clothes for people at night. The year he got into college, I sold my only gold bracelet to pay his tuition. Now he made a fortune, and I couldn't even get him to pay for a surgery to fix my leg. By the time I left the building, the rain was coming down harder than ever, but I no longer felt the cold or even the pain in my knee. The ache in my heart was 1,000 times worse. Marge caught up to me, holding an umbrella and tilting it over my head. "Eleanor, let me walk you home." Rain streamed down my face, and I couldn't tell if it was from the sky or from my eyes. My knee hurt so much I could barely take a step, and I had to lean on her to keep moving forward. "I heard everything," Marge whispered. "That daughter-in-law of yours is a piece of work, and Gregory, to think you raised him all by yourself." I just shook my head, unable to speak. On the bus, other passengers stared at my drenched clothes. I clutched the plastic bag with my diagnosis as if it were my last hope. "Eleanor," Marge whispered in my ear, "don't listen to Victoria crying poor. They're getting ready to send Clara to school in England. The tuition alone is over $60,000 a year. She was just bragging about it in the lobby the other day." My heart felt like it had been pierced by a needle. Clara was my granddaughter. She was 16 now, but when she was little, she was so close to me. Ever since she started high school, Victoria rarely let her visit, saying it would interfere with her studies. When we reached my stop, Marge insisted on walking me all the way to my apartment door. I lived in an old building on the north side of town, where the hallway light had been broken for months. Groping my way up to the 3rd floor in the dark, my knee was so painful it had gone numb. "You wait here. I'll go put on some water for tea," Marge said, helping me unlock the door and expertly finding the electric kettle. She was the only old friend I still kept in touch with. I sank onto the peeling vinyl of my old sofa, looking around the small apartment I'd lived in for over 30 years. The walls were covered with photos of Gregory growing up, and there was one wedding picture of my husband and me. He was still alive then. We weren't rich, but we were a happy family. "Drink this." Marge handed me a warm mug. "Eleanor, you have to try not to let it get to you. Young people these days, they only think about themselves." Holding the warm mug, a memory suddenly surfaced. "Marge, do you remember that time I got injured at the textile plant? The work accident?" "Of course I do." Marge slapped her thigh. "You were trying to get more overtime, worked 3 night shifts in a row, and passed out next to the machine. That's when you hurt your knee, wasn't it?" I nodded. It was 1998. Gregory had just started high school, and his tuition and living expenses all depended on my small salary. I worked myself to the bone for the extra pay, and my right leg got caught in the machinery. I almost had to have it amputated. The factory gave me a settlement, but most of it went to paying for Gregory's education. I remember the factory said it was a workplace injury, that they would cover part of any future medical costs. I tried hard to recall the details. Marge's eyes lit up. "That's right. Why don't you go ask about it? The laws are better now. They have special provisions for old work-related injuries." A sliver of hope ignited in my heart. I pulled out an old photo album from a drawer and found a faded group picture from the factory. On the back, it said, "Model Workers of the United Textile Plant, 1,997. In the 3rd row, 4th from the left, was me. Standing next to me was the workshop supervisor at the time, Arthur Miller. "Mr. Miller?" I pointed to the photo. He later became the assistant plant manager. He was still there when the company restructured. He would definitely know about the workers' compensation. Marge leaned in to look at the photo. "I kind of remember him. I think he lives over at the Elmwood Senior Residence. My cousin works there as a nurse. I can ask her for you." As she was speaking, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. When I answered, Victoria's icy voice came through the line. "Mom, I hope you won't be telling people what happened today. Gregory is in a management position at his company, and he needs to maintain a certain image." I was stunned. I haven't told anyone." "See that you don't," Victoria said with a cold laugh. "By the way, have you put away all those old photos and documents? Clara mentioned wanting to see them, so I asked Gregory to bring a few albums home." My heart sank. Before I left the house today, I was sure all the photo albums were in the drawer. But now, the one on top was missing. "Victoria, you. Mom, you're getting older. You should just rest and relax." "Don't go around stirring up trouble," Victoria interrupted. "That leg pain is an old problem. Just get more rest. Why waste all that money on it?" The line went dead. I sat there, stunned, and a terrible realization dawned on me. I rushed to the drawer where I kept my important papers. Just as I feared, my Social Security card, the workers' compensation certificate, and my old factory ID were all gone. "What's wrong?" Marge asked. My voice trembled. They They stole my documents. Marge was furious. That's it. I'm calling the police. Don't, I said, grabbing her arm. I have no proof. Besides, he's still my son. Just then, another wave of excruciating pain shot through my knee, and my vision went black. Marge quickly helped me lie down and took a bottle of painkillers from her purse. You take one of these. I'll go get the community doctor to come take a look. I took the pill and drifted into a hazy sleep. In my dream, I was back at the textile plant. Amid the roar of the machinery, I saw my younger self working desperately. In the distance, Gregory, dressed in his school uniform, walked away without a backward glance. Mrs. Jensen? Eleanor? A gentle male voice woke me. I opened my eyes to see Dr. Evans from the clinic, the new doctor, bending over to examine my knee. He was in his early 30s, with black-rimmed glasses, and had a kind, scholarly look about him. You're awake? He said, helping me sit up. Marge said you were in a lot of pain, so I came over. He carefully examined my knee and looked again at the x-rays I had brought back, his brow furrowing deeper. Eleanor, you absolutely must have this surgery as soon as possible. Otherwise, you might really lose the ability to walk. I told him with a bitter smile that I couldn't afford it. Dr. Evans was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, Marge mentioned this was an old workplace injury? Yes, from '98, at the textile plant. Have you ever applied for long-term medical assistance for a work-related injury? Dr. Evans's eyes lit up. The policies have changed. A large percentage of subsequent treatment costs for old injuries can now be reimbursed. My heart leaped. Really? But my certificate of injury is missing. That's okay, Dr. Evans said, taking out his phone. I have a contact at the Department of Labor. I can help you look up the records. Do you remember the full name of the factory and the details of the incident? I nodded eagerly and told him everything I could remember. As Dr. Evans took notes, he added. Also, if there was any unpaid compensation when the factory was restructured, you can now claim it with interest. I had a patient last year who recovered tens of thousands of dollars. Unpaid compensation? I vaguely remembered talk of a payout when the plant restructured, but at the time, Gregory was starting college and desperately needed money, so I never followed up. After Dr. Evans left, I searched through my entire apartment. Finally, in an old cookie tin, I found a few yellowed slips of paper. They were receipts and compensation calculation sheets from the factory's accounting department. They clearly stated my years of service, my base salary, and the amount of compensation I was owed. Because the factory was short on funds at the time, they had only paid a portion, issuing an IOU for the rest. My hands began to shake. If I could get this money back, with interest, it might be enough for the surgery. Just as I was carefully putting the papers away, my phone rang again. This time it was Gregory. Mom. His voice sounded tired. About today. Victoria's attitude was not good. I apologize on her behalf. I was silent for a moment. Gregory, I don't want an apology. I want an explanation. I raised you through so much hardship. Do I not even deserve to have my leg fixed? Mom, it's not like that, Gregory said anxiously. It's just that things are really tight at home right now. Clara's study abroad. You can afford $60,000 a year for her tuition, but you can't find $40,000 for my surgery? I couldn't help but ask. The other end of the line was silent. After a long pause, Gregory finally said in a low voice, Mom, Victoria manages the money. You know her temper. I closed my eyes, my heart feeling like it was being sliced apart. This was the son I had raised, who couldn't even stand up to his wife to get his own mother medical treatment. Gregory, I took a deep breath. I don't want your money anymore. But you have to return my old photos and my documents. What documents? Gregory sounded flustered. Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I hung up the phone, tears blurring my vision. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. I wiped my eyes, took out a pen and paper, and started to write down everything I remembered about the factory, making a list of old coworkers who could vouch for me. If I couldn't rely on my son, I would have to rely on myself. Dr. Evans was right. It was time to claim the compensation that had been owed to me for over 20 years. And the first step was to find my old colleagues especially the former supervisor who knew the whole story, Arthur Miller. I dialed Marge's number. "Marge, can you ask your cousin if Arthur Miller is really at the Elmwood Senior Residence?" The early morning sun filtered through the thin curtains. I got up early, ignoring the pain in my knee, and gathered my essentials: my ID, the yellowed financial slips, the old photos, and a summary of my situation that Dr. Evans had helped me write. I put everything in an old shoulder bag and kept it close. Marge had called back last night to confirm that Arthur Miller was indeed at Elmwood, but his health had been poor recently. I had to find him quickly, before my documents were destroyed. On the bus, I clutched my bag, glancing around nervously. Maybe it was my imagination, but I felt like someone was watching me. When the bus reached the stop at the old textile plant site, I slowly got off. The sight before me was jarring. The factory where I had spent my youth was gone, replaced by a sprawling shopping center. Only the old locust tree at the entrance remained, its thick trunk still bearing the nail marks from where we used to hang a Happy New Year banner. "Can I help you, ma'am?" a young man from a convenience store asked. I shook my head and pointed outside. "This used to be the United Textile plant, right?" "Yeah, torn down years ago," the young man said casually. "This is all a commercial plaza now. What about the old factory workers? Where did they all go?" The young man shrugged. "Who knows? It's been over 20 years. Disappointed? I was about to leave when I heard a raspy voice call out, "Eleanor? Eleanor Jensen?" I turned to see an old man in a wheelchair squinting at me. His hair was completely white, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, but I recognized his eyes immediately. It was Walt, from the boiler room. "Walt?" I walked over, overjoyed. "You still recognize me?" "How could I forget?" Walt grinned, revealing a few remaining teeth. "You were the Iron Lady of the plant. Did the work of 2 people to send your son to college." After a few minutes of catching up, I asked him anxiously, "Walt, do you know where Supervisor Miller is?" Marge said he was at the Elmwood residence. "Arthur?" Walt shook his head. "He's not there anymore. Had a stroke last year and moved in with his daughter. They live over in the Sunshine Gardens complex." I quickly jotted down the address and asked if he knew anything about the compensation the factory owed us from the restructuring. Walt suddenly lowered his voice. "You're here for the money too, huh? Old man Hemlock just got over $80,000 back last month. I heard that young clerk from the finance department, Kevin, works at the Department of Labor now. He's the one in charge of these old cases." This news warmed my heart. After saying goodbye to Walt, I immediately took a cab to Sunshine Gardens. It was a modest, middle-class complex. The security guard, hearing I was looking for Mr. Miller, pointed me directly to Building 3. A middle-aged woman opened the door, eyeing me cautiously. "You're looking for my dad?" "I'm an old colleague of his, Eleanor Jensen," I explained. "I wanted to ask him about something from the factory. My dad has some trouble speaking now." She hesitated, but still let me in. Mr. Miller was sitting in a wheelchair on the balcony. He looked much older than in the photo, and the left side of his face drooped slightly, but his eyes were still sharp and clear. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he managed to say, "Lee Little, L." I crouched in front of him, ignoring the pain in my knee, and briefly explained why I was there. At the words "workers' compensation," Mr. Miller became agitated and gestured with his good right hand for his daughter to bring him a folder. "Dad's kept all of this," his daughter explained. He said he owed it to his fellow workers. Inside the folder were several yellowed documents. One of them was the minutes from a factory meeting about special compensation for injured workers, bearing Mr. Miller's signature and a copy of the official stamp. Even more exciting was a list of unpaid compensation claims. My name was right there, next to the amount of $10,000. In 1999, that was equivalent to 3 years of my salary. Thank you," I choked out, carefully taking pictures of the documents with my phone. As I was leaving, Mr. Miller suddenly grabbed my hand and said, his voice slurred but firm, Find Attorney Cole. He knows." His daughter explained that Mr. Cole was her husband, a lawyer specializing in labor disputes who had recently helped several former workers get their compensation back. As soon as I left, I called Attorney Cole. He sounded young, but as soon as he heard my situation, he was very confident. Mrs. Jensen, with historical wage claims like this, plus interest and penalties, you should be able to recover at least $75,000. But we'll need your original work ID and pay stubs. My heart sank. My son may have taken my work ID. That complicates things, Mr. Cole admitted. But with witnesses and these documents, we might still have a case. Can you come to my office tomorrow to discuss it in detail? After hanging up, I decided to go home first to look for any other supporting documents. As I reached my apartment building, a familiar black sedan pulled up beside me. The window rolled down to reveal Gregory's tense face. "Mom, get in the car." I instinctively clutched my bag. What are you doing here?" "Just get in," he said, his voice cold. The ride was filled with an awkward silence. Gregory drove straight to my building and followed me upstairs. The moment we were inside, he demanded, "Mom, what are you doing asking around about the factory compensation?" I was shocked. "You're having me followed? I'm concerned about you." Gregory raised his voice. "You're at an age where you shouldn't be running all over the place. What if something happens?" "Something happens?" I laughed coldly. "I don't even have the money to fix my leg. What else do I have to lose?" Gregory's expression softened. "Mom, that's not what I meant. Victoria, she—" "Don't blame everything on Victoria," I suddenly erupted. "Gregory, you're a grown man in your 40s. Can't you even make the decision to pay for your own mother's medical care?" Gregory was stunned by my outburst. After a moment, he said quietly, "Mom, I took the documents. I was afraid you'd get scammed. Give them back to me." I held out my hand. "Right now." Gregory hesitated, then pulled my work ID and the workers' compensation certificate from his briefcase. "Mom, even if this compensation exists, you won't get much. Don't get your hopes up." I snatched the documents from him. "My business is none of your concern," I said coldly. "You can leave now." Gregory stood his ground. Suddenly he said, "Mom, do you know what I was most afraid of when I was a kid? You getting sick. I remember one time you had a fever of 102, but you still went to work. I stayed home crying, waiting for you to come back. My eyes stung with tears, but I hardened my heart. And now? Now you can't wait for me to die so I won't be a burden to you, is that it?" "Mom." Gregory's eyes welled up. "Go," I commanded, turning my back to him. "I need to rest." After Gregory left, I immediately checked my documents. Thankfully, they weren't damaged. I organized all my materials, ready to see Mr. Cole the next day. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was another unknown number. "Eleanor Jensen," a man's cold voice said. "Old people should know when to stay quiet. Don't go stirring up trouble. Digging up the past won't do anyone any good." A chill ran down my spine. Who is this? But the line was already dead. I stood by the window and saw the black sedan still parked downstairs. Someone inside seemed to be on the phone. Was it Gregory or someone Victoria had sent? My hands started to tremble, but then my resolve hardened. The more they tried to intimidate me, the more determined I was to get this money back. The next morning, I arrived at Mr. Cole's office as scheduled. He was in his early 30s, dressed in a sharp suit. After reviewing my materials, he was very optimistic. "Mrs. Jensen, the chain of evidence is very strong. With Mr. Miller willing to testify, we have a high probability of winning." He calculated that with the principal, plus over 20 years of interest and penalties, I could expect to get back around $75,000. However, Mr. Cole pushed his glasses up. "I heard from your son. He doesn't approve," I said with a bitter smile. "No, it's that he called my office yesterday. He said you were getting on in years and that your mental state was unreliable. He told me to be cautious in handling your case." I slammed my hand on the table. "He's lying. Mr. Cole, calm me down. Mrs. Jensen, I understand. But just to be safe, I suggest you draw up a simple will, specifying how this money will be used in case of any unforeseen circumstances." I calmed down, realizing he was right. On his advice, I drafted a will stating that if anything happened to me, all my assets would be donated to a children's hospital. Leaving the law office, the sunlight was so bright it hurt my eyes. $75,000. It was enough not only for my surgery, but also to give me some security in my old age. But the memory of the threatening phone call and Gregory's actions cast a dark shadow over my heart. Why were they so afraid of me getting this money? Was it just because they didn't want me to be financially independent, or was there another reason? I decided to go talk to Marge. As I approached her building, I saw her rushing toward me. "Eleanor, I was just coming to find you. There was a strange man snooping around your apartment door." My heart sank. What did he look like? "He was wearing a baseball cap. Couldn't see his face," Marge whispered. "He was fiddling with your lock for a while. I pretended to be walking by, and it scared him off. It seemed they weren't just watching me. They were trying to break into my home." A chill went through me, and then an idea formed. "Marge, I need you to do me a favor." I asked Marge to spread a rumor in the neighborhood that my condition had worsened and that I might not have much time left. Then I went home, lay down in bed, and pretended to be seriously ill, waiting to see how Gregory and Victoria would react. Sure enough, as evening approached, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Gregory and Victoria standing outside with Clara. Victoria was even holding a fruit basket. I slowly opened the door, deliberately hunching over to appear frail. Clara was the first to rush in and hug me. "Grandma, what's wrong?" At 16, Clara was already taller than me, but in my eyes, she was still the little girl who loved to be cuddled. I stroked her hair, noticing 2 new piercings in her ears, something Victoria detested. "Mom, Marge said you were very sick," Gregory said, studying me with a frown. He was holding an expensive-looking gift box. Victoria stood behind them, her face a mask of forced concern. "Yes, Mom. You should go to the hospital." I gave a cold laugh. "I thought you said at my age. It doesn't matter if I get treated or not." Victoria's face tightened. Gregory quickly intervened. "Mom, don't say that. We were worried about you." I let them in and slowly made my way to the sofa. Clara sat close to me, her eyes red. "Grandma, does your leg hurt a lot?" "It's fine. Grandma's used to it," I said, patting her hand. I noticed she was wearing the cheap bracelet I had given her last year. The expensive brand-name jewelry she usually wore was gone. Gregory and Victoria walked around the small apartment as if they were inspecting it. Victoria even opened my refrigerator. "Mom, what is all this? It's so unhealthy." "What I eat doesn't matter," I said flatly. "Did you come here today just to inspect my fridge?" Gregory sat down awkwardly. "Mom, we're worried. You've been running around everywhere, even hiring a lawyer." So, they had been watching my every move. I suppressed my anger. "My business is none of your concern. Weren't you the ones who refused to pay for my $40,000 surgery?" Victoria's expression changed instantly. "Mom, you can't put it like that. We have our difficulties." "What difficulties?" I looked her straight in the eye. "You can afford $60,000 a year for Clara's tuition, but my surgery only costs $40,000. You call that a difficulty?" Clara looked up in surprise. "Grandma, how did you know I was going to study abroad? I haven't even decided if I'm going yet." Victoria shot her a harsh glare. "This is a conversation for adults. Stay out of it." I noticed Gregory looked flustered and kept checking his watch. Victoria, meanwhile, kept glancing toward my bedroom, as if searching for something. Suddenly, I understood. They were here for the factory documents. "If there's nothing else, you should go," I said, coughing deliberately. "I need to rest." "Mom," Gregory leaned in. "Those old factory documents? Can you let me see them? I'll keep them safe for you." "Just as I thought." I laughed coldly. "No need. I've already given them to my lawyer." "Lawyer?" Victoria's voice went shrill. "What lawyer?" "The lawyer handling the compensation case," I said calmly. "Mr. Cole says I can get back around $75,000, enough for my surgery and to live on." The color drained from Gregory and Victoria's faces. They exchanged a look, and then Victoria forced a smile. "Mom, that's wonderful news. Actually, we were just trying to figure out a way to raise the money for your surgery." "Is that so?" I asked sarcastically. "Do you have the $40,000 ready?" Victoria was speechless. Gregory quickly interjected. "Mom, we can discuss the money. Just get the documents back first. We don't need—" "I don't need your help." I cut him off. "I can handle it myself." The atmosphere became tense. Clara looked at her parents, then at me, and suddenly said, "Mom, Dad, why don't you go home? I'll stay here with Grandma for a few days." "Absolutely not," Victoria said sharply. "You have your tutoring session next week." "I can miss it," Clara said stubbornly. "Grandma needs someone to take care of her." I looked at my granddaughter in amazement. The quiet, obedient little girl I remembered had become so assertive. In the end, Victoria insisted, and Clara reluctantly left with them. As she was leaving, she secretly slipped a piece of paper into my pocket. After they were gone, I unfolded it. In her messy handwriting it said, "Grandma, I'll come back secretly tonight. Wait for me." My eyes welled with tears. It turned out there was still someone in this family who genuinely cared about me. Around 9 o'clock that night, the doorbell rang once, very softly. I opened it, and Clara slipped inside like a little cat, carrying a plastic bag. "Grandma, I brought you some medicine and something to eat," she whispered, glancing nervously out the window. "My dad's car is parked at the entrance to the complex." I told them I was going to a friend's house to study. I pulled her down to sit with me, my heart aching. "Clara, you shouldn't have taken such a risk." "Grandma, I know everything," Clara said, her eyes red. "Mom and Dad refused to give you money for your surgery, and they stole your documents. It's horrible." It turned out Clara had suspected something was wrong for a while. Today, when her parents weren't looking, she had looked at Gregory's phone and discovered they were monitoring my every move. "Grandma, I remember how good you were to me when I was little," Clara said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "When I had a fever, you stayed up all night taking care of me. Whenever Mom and Dad were on a business trip, you were always there. Now they're treating you like this. I hate them." I stroked her hair. "Don't say that. They're still your parents." "Grandma." Clara suddenly sat up straight. "I can help you. They're going to a banquet tomorrow night. I can get the documents and bring them back to you." I was shocked. "No, that's too dangerous." "It's fine," Clara said, her eyes shining with determination. "I know Mom keeps things in the safe in the study. The combination is my birthday." I was both touched and worried, but Clara had made up her mind. Before she left, she heated up the food she had brought and poured me a basin of hot water to soak my feet. My knee was aching terribly today. "Wait for my good news, Grandma," she said, kissing my cheek before slipping out quietly. I tossed and turned all night, anxious for Clara's success but terrified she would get caught. At 3 a.m, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara. "Grandma, I got them. I'll see you after school tomorrow." The next afternoon, Clara arrived with all of my documents as promised. But she had brought something else too, a photocopy of a financial record. "Grandma, I found this in the safe," she said nervously. "I think it's from Dad's company." I took a closer look and gasped. It was a record of embezzled funds amounting to over $1 million, with Gregory's signature on it. No wonder they were so panicked about my compensation claim. They were afraid that if I became financially independent, I would no longer be under their control, and worse, that I might report them. "Clara, this is huge," I said, my hands trembling. "Do your parents know you saw this?" Clara shook her head. I copied it secretly and put the original back. She bit her lip. "Grandma, is Dad going to go to jail?" I held her close. "No, he won't. Grandma will figure something out." Just then, Mr. Cole called, his voice excited. "Mrs. Jensen, good news. The old plant manager has agreed to testify for you. We can file the papers tomorrow." I told him I had recovered the documents and we arranged to meet at his office the next morning. After hanging up, I looked at Clara's worried face and an idea began to form. "Clara, Grandma needs you to help me one more time." The next morning, I took all the materials to Mr. Cole's office. He examined each document carefully and nodded repeatedly. "This is perfect, Mrs. Jensen. This evidence is more than enough to support your claim." "When's the soonest I can get the money?" I asked eagerly. The pain in my knee was becoming unbearable. "If we use the expedited channel, about 2 weeks," Mr. Cole said, pushing up his glasses. He hesitated. "But about your son, I took the photocopy Clara had given me from my bag. "Mr. Cole, look at this." After he read it, his expression became grave. This is embezzlement. With an amount this large, it's a felony. "What should I do?" I asked in a low voice. "He's still my son." Mr. Cole thought for a moment. "Mrs. Jensen, I suggest you finalize the compensation claim first, and then we'll deal with this." He handed me a small digital recorder. "Protect yourself. They might get desperate." I left the office and went straight to the clinic to find Dr. Evans. He was thrilled to hear the compensation was coming through. "That's wonderful. I'll contact an orthopedic specialist for you right away and try to schedule the surgery as soon as possible." On the way home, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following me. I looked back several times, but saw no one suspicious. It must be my nerves, I thought. When I got to my front door, I reached for my key and noticed that the lock had been tampered with. My heart leaped into my throat. I gently pushed the door open. The apartment was a mess. Drawers were pulled out, and their contents were scattered all over the floor. They had been here. I quickly checked where I had hidden the documents. Thankfully, I had the most important ones with me. As I was breathing a sigh of relief, my phone rang. It was Victoria. "Mom." Her voice was as cold as ice. "You put Clara up to stealing from our home." I took a deep breath. "Victoria, you broke into my apartment. What was that about?" "Don't play dumb." Victoria raised her voice. "Give me Clara and those papers. Or else." "Or else what?" I pressed the record button on the device Mr. Cole gave me. "You'll call the police and say I stole from you? Don't forget, breaking and entering is a crime." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Victoria laughed. "Mom, you've gotten bold, haven't you?" "Fine. We'll see about this." After she hung up, I immediately sent a text to Clara, telling her to come straight to my place after school and not go home. Then, I started to clean up the mess. Under a sofa cushion, I found a listening device. No wonder they knew my every move. I sneered and dropped the bug into a glass of water. That evening, Clara arrived with red, swollen eyes. "Grandma," Mom called and screamed at me. She called me a traitor. I held her close. "Don't be afraid. Grandma's here." I hesitated, but decided to tell her the truth. "Clara, your father, he may have embezzled money from his company." Clara's eyes widened. "Really? Is he going to jail?" "If he can pay it back in time." "Maybe not," I sighed. "But it will take a lot of money." Clara bit her lip. So that's why they were so desperate for your compensation money." I nodded. It seemed Victoria had known about Gregory's crime all along and planned to use my money to cover it up. Just as we were talking, the doorbell rang, loud and jarring. Through the peephole, I saw Victoria standing outside with two large, intimidating men. Her face was dark with rage. "Clara, I know you're in there!" Victoria shrieked. "Come out right now!" Clara trembled with fear. I squeezed her hand tightly. "Don't be afraid." I raised my voice. "Victoria, what do you think you're doing, bringing these men here?" "Give me my daughter!" Victoria started kicking the door. "And those documents? You old hag! Don't make me break this door down." The door shook on its hinges. I quickly pulled Clara into the bedroom, locked the door, and dialed 911. Just then, there was a crash of breaking glass. One of the men had climbed in through the kitchen window. "Grandma!" Clara screamed. I stood in front of her and pulled out the recorder. "Stop right there. I've already called the police. Everything you're doing is being recorded." The man hesitated. From outside, Victoria's voice yelled, "Don't listen to her! Get the girl and the papers!" In the nick of time, the sound of police sirens grew closer. The man swore and jumped back out the window. A few minutes later, the police were at the door. I opened it to find two officers standing there, with a furious Victoria behind them. "Officer, this is my mother-in-law," Victoria said quickly. "She has dementia, and she's kidnapped my daughter." "That's a lie!" Clara rushed out. "Officer, I came here on my own. My mom brought men to hurt my grandma." The police looked from one of us to the other, confused. What exactly is going on here? I took out the recorder and played the recording of Victoria's threatening phone call and the sounds of them kicking the door. "Officer, my daughter-in-law broke in and threatened us." "This is the security camera footage from my apartment," I said, pointing to a non-functional camera I had on the wall. Victoria's face went pale. "Mom, how could you?" "Ma'am, please come with us to the station," one of the officers said sternly to Victoria. After Victoria was taken away, Clara and I went to the police station to give our statements. The police said her actions could warrant an arrest, but given that it was a family dispute, they recommended mediation. "No mediation," I said firmly. "I want to file for a restraining order, to keep her away from me and Clara." It was late when we finished. As we were leaving, Gregory suddenly appeared at the station, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom, did you have to take it this far?" I looked at him coldly. "Am I the one taking it too far, or are you the ones who pushed me to this point?" Gregory fell to his knees with a thud. "Mom, I was wrong. I'm begging you, please let Victoria go. If word of this gets out, my career is over." Seeing him like this, I felt a mix of pity and anger. "Gregory, even now, you're only thinking of yourself. Your wife brought thugs to my home to attack us, and you're still defending her." "Mom," Gregory cried like a child. I just—" "Go home," I said, waving my hand wearily. "I will go drop the charges tomorrow, but on one condition: you both stay away from me and Clara." Gregory thanked me profusely and left. Clara looked at me. "Grandma, are you really going to forgive them?" "It's not about forgiveness," I said, stroking her hair. "It's about giving your father a chance to change." The next day, Mr. Cole called to say the compensation had been approved, $76,500, to be deposited within 3 days. At the same time, Dr. Evans brought good news. The hospital had scheduled my surgery for the following week. I was so emotional I started to cry. With this money, I could not only get my surgery but also live the rest of my life with dignity, without having to depend on anyone. But my relief was short-lived. The afternoon Victoria was released, she came straight to my apartment. This time she was alone, her face a terrifying mask of rage. "Eleanor Jensen," she said, using my full name. "Give me Clara and the documents, or you can forget about having that surgery." I calmly pressed the record button. "Victoria, are you threatening me?" "So what if I am?" Victoria sneered. "You think you've won just because you got the money? Let me tell you, Gregory has already gone to the Department of Labor to report that your documents are fake." My heart sank, but I kept my composure. "Let him. My documents are all real. And another thing." Victoria leaned in close, her voice a venomous whisper. "You know how easy it is for accidents to happen in a hospital? A wrong dose of medication, for example." A chill ran through me, but I remembered Mr. Cole's advice and straightened my back. "Victoria, if you take one more step, this recording will be sent to the district attorney's office. And I wonder, how interested would they be in your husband's embezzlement?" Victoria froze as if struck by lightning. "You? How do you know?" "I know a lot more than you think," I said, holding up the photocopy of the financial record. "For example, this." The color drained from Victoria's face. She stumbled backward. "What? What do you want?" "It's simple," I said, each word deliberate. "From now on, you stay out of my life, and I'll stay out of yours. Don't interfere with my compensation or my surgery, and for now, I won't say anything about your illegal activities. But if there is a next time," I shook the papers in my hand. Victoria glared at me, her teeth clenched, but in the end, she said nothing and stormed out. After she left, my legs gave out, and I nearly collapsed. I had won the battle, but I felt no joy. Using my own son's crime to threaten my daughter-in-law. What a tragedy. 3 days later, the money was in my account. I immediately went to the hospital and paid the deposit for the surgery, scheduled for the following Monday. Clara insisted on taking time off from school to be with me, and I couldn't convince her otherwise. The night before the surgery, Gregory called, his voice choked with emotion. "Mom, for your surgery tomorrow, do you need me to be there?" I was silent for a moment. "That's up to you." "Mom, Gregory seemed to want to say more, but in the end he just managed to take care and hung up. The next day, as they were wheeling me into the operating room, I looked around. Gregory wasn't there. It would be a lie to say I wasn't disappointed, but it was what I had expected. Clara squeezed my hand tightly. Grandma, don't be scared. I'll be right here waiting for you. The anesthesia began to take effect, and my consciousness faded. My last thought was that when I recovered, I had to help Clara escape this toxic family. As for Gregory, his fate was up to him. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Clara's tear-streaked face, and then Gregory's gaunt one. He had come after all. "Mom," Gregory whispered, taking my hand. A tear fell onto my skin. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I smiled weakly, my gaze drifting past him to the sunlight streaming through the window. The surgery was a success. A new life was about to begin. The post-operative pain was far more intense than I had imagined. Every time the nurse came to help me turn over, my vision would swim with black spots, and I had to bite my lip to keep from crying out. Clara took a full week off from school to stay by my bedside day and night, wiping my face, feeding me, and massaging my good leg. "Does it hurt, Grandma?" she would always ask softly, her eyes full of concern. "It doesn't hurt," I'd force a smile. "It's much better than before." And that part was true. Although the incision burned, the sharp, grinding pain in the joint that had tormented me for years was finally gone. The doctor said my recovery was going well, and in another 2 weeks, I could try walking. Gregory came to visit again on the 3rd day after my surgery. He stood at the foot of the bed, looking as lost and helpless as a scolded child. He brought a basket of expensive, imported fruit, the kind you'd give to a corporate executive. "How are you feeling, Mom?" he asked tentatively. "I'm all right," I answered curtly, not wanting to argue in front of Clara. He stood there awkwardly for a while, then said, "The company is sending me on a business trip. I might not be able to visit for a while." I knew immediately what that meant. Victoria wouldn't let him come. I nodded. "Go focus on your work. I have someone to take care of me." He left in a hurry, as if he'd been granted a pardon, not even turning back when Clara called after him. Clara stomped her foot in frustration. "How can Dad be like that?" I patted her hand. "Don't blame him. He has his own struggles." The words tasted like a lie in my own mouth. But what could I do? He was still my son. On the 5th day, a new patient was moved into my room. She was a woman in her early 70s named Evelyn, who had just had surgery for a herniated disc. She wore gold-rimmed glasses and spoke in a soft, gentle voice. You could tell she was an educated woman. "This is Professor Reed," the nurse introduced her. She was the head of the history department at the university before she retired. Professor Reed smiled and nodded at me. "A pleasure. I hope we get along." At first, I felt a bit intimidated. I'd never spent time with someone so accomplished, but Evelyn had no airs about her. Knowing I had trouble moving, she always insisted the nurses tend to me first. At night, when we couldn't sleep, she would tell me history stories in a low voice, from Catherine the Great to Eleanor Roosevelt, and I was completely captivated. "Eleanor," she started calling me once we got to know each other. "You have a wonderful granddaughter." Clara was indeed a sweetheart. All the other families in the ward praised her for being so mature and caring at such a young age. Whenever they said that, Clara would blush, and my heart would swell with a mixture of pride and sorrow. If it weren't for our family's turmoil, a girl her age should be enjoying a carefree youth. On the 7th morning, Evelyn saw me staring out the window at the ginkgo trees and asked, "Eleanor, what are your plans after you're discharged?" I was taken aback. "Go home and rest, I suppose." "All by yourself?" She frowned. "The recovery period is crucial. You can't be without help." I gave a sad smile. "I'm used to it." Clara had offered to stay with me, but I didn't want to disrupt her schooling. Evelyn thought for a moment. "There's a continuing education and wellness program at the university's senior campus. Have you ever considered something like that? The facilities are excellent, and they have professional therapists on site." A senior campus? The idea was intriguing. Would someone like me be able to go? "Why not?" Evelyn smiled. "I'm heading there myself next week. If you're interested, I can be your reference." She described the campus in detail. They had classes in calligraphy, painting, dance, even smartphone tutorials. The living quarters were private rooms with their own bathrooms, and there was a 24-hour nursing staff. Most importantly, Evelyn said, her tone meaningful, There, you are Eleanor Jensen first, and someone's grandmother or someone's mother second. That sentence struck a chord deep inside me. For my entire life, I had lived for others, for my husband, for my son, and now for my granddaughter. When would I ever get a chance to live for myself? That afternoon, when Clara came with my lunch, I mentioned it to her. Her eyes lit up. "Grandma, that's a great idea. I just looked it up, it's not far from my school. I can visit you on weekends." Seeing her excitement, I made up my mind. All right, as soon as the doctor gives the okay, we'll go check it out. Later that day, Gregory called, his voice frantic. "Mom, is Clara with you? She hasn't been home in 3 days." My heart skipped a beat. "Isn't she going home every night?" "No." Gregory was nearly in tears. "Victoria is going crazy. We thought she'd been kidnapped." I looked over at Clara, who was calmly peeling an apple for me. She shook her head and put a finger to her lips. "Gregory," I said calmly, "Clara is with me. She's perfectly safe." There was a pause on the other end, followed by Gregory's suppressed shout. "Mom, how could you do this? She's a student. She has classes to attend." "She took a leave of absence," I said evenly, "to take care of me." Gregory was sputtering with rage. "You're abducting a minor. I could call the police." "Go ahead," I snapped back, my own anger flaring. "Let the police see how you two treat your own mother and your own daughter." That stopped him. After a moment, he pleaded in a low voice, "Mom, Victoria, she's really worried about Clara." "Worried?" I scoffed. "Is she worried about Clara, or is she worried about that document Clara has?" Another long silence. Finally, Gregory gave in. "Mom, can you please let me talk to her?" I handed the phone to Clara. She hesitated before taking it. "Dad?" I couldn't hear what Gregory said, but I saw Clara's expression shift from nervous to surprised, and finally, to resolved. "No, I'm staying with Grandma. Not unless you promise to stop bullying her. I know what you did. I have proof." She hung up, her small face set with determination. I pulled her into a hug, my heart aching. "Clara, don't ruin your relationship with your parents because of me." "Grandma," she said, looking at me seriously, "this isn't about you and them. It's about right and wrong. They were wrong, and they need to admit it. When had this child become so wise?" I held her tight, a mix of pride and pain welling up inside me. The next day, Victoria showed up at the hospital. She was dressed in a designer suit, her makeup flawless, but the dark circles under her eyes were impossible to hide. The moment she saw Clara, she lunged forward to slap her. "You wretched girl, do you have any idea how worried I've been?" Clara ducked behind my bed. "Mom, calm down. This is a hospital." Professor Reed wisely pressed the nurse's call button. Soon, the head nurse arrived with security, warning Victoria not to cause a disturbance. Forcing her anger down, Victoria hissed, "Clara, come home with me." "No," Clara said stubbornly. "I'm staying with Grandma until she's fully recovered." Victoria was shaking with rage. She turned to me. "Mom, are you trying to tear our family apart?" I looked at her calmly. "Victoria Clara is 16 years old. She can think for herself. What's so wrong with her wanting to spend some time with her grandmother?" Victoria looked from me to Clara's determined face, and then she suddenly burst into tears. You're all ganging up on me." With that, she turned and ran out. Clara was stunned. It was the first time she had ever seen her formidable mother show a moment of weakness. I sighed. "Clara, maybe you should." "No." Clara shook her head. "That's just an act. Last night she was telling Dad she was going to threaten to disown me." I was amazed at Clara's maturity and chilled by Victoria's manipulative tactics. She would stop at nothing to control her daughter. 2 weeks later, the doctor discharged me, but with strict orders to continue physical therapy. Clara and I went straight to visit the senior campus. Professor Reed met us there personally. The campus was even more beautiful than I had imagined, like a large garden full of green trees and blooming flowers. The rooms were private singles, small, but clean and neat, with their own bathrooms. In the activity center, one group of seniors was in a calligraphy class, while another was learning ballroom dancing. Everyone looked vibrant and engaged. "What do you think?" Evelyn asked with a smile. "It's perfect." Clara was even more excited than I was. "Grandma, you have to live here." I nodded and decided to register on the spot. The process was simple, just requiring my ID and a security deposit. My compensation money was enough to cover the fees for a full year. Before she left, Clara hugged me tightly. "Grandma, you take care of yourself. I'll visit you every weekend, I promise." It was only then that I realized she was planning to go home. As much as I would miss her, I knew it was the right decision. She was still Gregory and Victoria's daughter, and she couldn't hide with me forever. "Go on," I said, stroking her hair. "Don't argue with your parents, and call me if you need anything." After seeing Clara off, I returned to my new room. Watching the sunset from my window, I was filled with a mix of emotions. In my 78 years, this was the first time I had ever made a major decision for myself. The first time I had a space that was entirely my own. Dinner was in the main dining hall. It was 3 courses and a soup, all soft and easy to eat, perfect for older people. The other women at my table were warm and welcoming. When they heard I had just had surgery, they all started sharing their own recovery tips. Back in my room, I tried sending Clara a text message, something she had just taught me a few days ago. The moment I hit send, my phone rang. It was Gregory. "Mom," he sounded exhausted. "Clara's home. Are you doing okay over there?" "I'm doing very well," I replied. Is the money enough?" he stammered. "I mean, for the surgery and the hospital stay." "I paid for it with the compensation money," I said, deliberately reminding him of its source, wanting to make him feel a pang of shame. As expected, Gregory fell silent. After a long pause, he said in a low voice, "Mom, I'm sorry." The apology was so sudden that I didn't know how to respond. I've been thinking a lot lately," his voice cracked. "Seeing Clara act so rebellious, it made me realize how much I must have disappointed you when I was younger." My eyes started to water. "Gregory, Mom, don't forgive me yet." He took a deep breath. Wait until I've actually earned it." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. It was the first time since the surgery that Gregory had shown any genuine emotion. I didn't know how long it would last, but it was a start. The next morning, Evelyn knocked on my door. "Eleanor, the calligraphy class starts today. Want to come along?" I walked with my cane to the activity center. The teacher was a retired school principal, and he started us with the most basic strokes. As I shakily wrote my first character, the teacher said in surprise, "Eleanor, your strokes have a solid foundation." I smiled shyly. "I used to paint promotional posters at the factory, so I practiced a bit." "That explains it," the principal said with admiration. "Your characters have good structure. You have a lot of potential." By the end of the class, I felt like I had rediscovered a part of my younger self, the feeling of focusing on each stroke, of forgetting all my troubles. Evelyn was right. Here, I was Eleanor Jensen first, and a grandmother or a mother second. Back in my room, I took out the new brush and paper I had bought and continued to practice. Before I knew it, it was dark outside. I realized with a start that this was the first time since my husband's death that I had become so completely absorbed in something that had nothing to do with my family. My phone buzzed. It was a picture from Clara of her homework, with a message. "Grandma, I miss you. Dad asked how you were doing." I smiled at the photo. This was good. I had my life, and she had hers. We were no longer dependent on each other, but we were still connected. By the 4th week of my recovery, I could walk short distances with a cane. Every morning, I would practice calligraphy for an hour at the activity center, followed by my physical therapy. In the afternoons, I would sometimes join a craft class or listen to Evelyn's history lectures. Life at the senior campus was more fulfilling than I could have imagined. All the residents here had their own stories. There were retired professors, former factory model workers, and empty nesters whose children lived abroad. We would all gather and share our life experiences, and no one judged anyone else based on their background. One weekend, Clara came to visit and excitedly told me she had joined the art club at her school. "Grandma, look what I drew." She showed me a watercolor painting of the two of us. It's beautiful, I said sincerely. You're much better than your grandma. All I can do is a little calligraphy. That's not true, Clara said, looking through the characters I had written that week. Grandma, you've improved so much. This character for Fortune is gorgeous. Just then, Evelyn knocked and came in. Her face lit up when she saw Clara. So this is the famous granddaughter you're always telling me about. She's lovely. Clara sweetly called her Grandma Evelyn, charming the older woman completely. Evelyn suggested we visit the campus greenhouse, where a small coffee shop had just opened. The greenhouse was bright and sunny, filled with flowers of every color. We sat on wicker chairs, sipping coffee, when Evelyn suddenly asked, Clara, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to study design, Clara said without hesitation. Fashion design or graphic design? Wonderful, Evelyn nodded. It's good to have a dream. Do your parents support you? Clara's smile faded slightly. My mom wants me to study finance. She says it's easier to find a job. I squeezed my granddaughter's hand. Clara has a real talent. I've seen her drawings. She's got a gift. Then you must stick to your choice, Evelyn said firmly. It's your life. Don't let anyone else decide it for you. Clara looked at us gratefully, then leaned in and whispered, Grandma, Dad has been different lately. He started doing chores around the house. He even secretly asked me what kind of food you like, said he wanted to learn how to cook it. A warmth spread through my chest, but I didn't say anything. Gregory had been spoiled his whole life. He'd never even washed his own socks. To hear he was learning to do housework was truly a surprise. After Clara left, Evelyn said thoughtfully, Eleanor, I think your son might really be starting to change. I hope so, I sighed. But that wife of his. People change, Evelyn said, patting my hand, especially when life gives them a sharp wake-up call. Evelyn's words proved to be true sooner than I expected. 3 days later, I was practicing in the calligraphy class when I got a call from Gregory. His voice was hoarse, as if he'd been crying. Mom, can I come see you? I was surprised. Right now? Yes, I'm downstairs. I went downstairs with my cane and found Gregory standing by a flower bed. He was unshaven, his eyes were red and swollen, and his suit was wrinkled. He looked nothing like the polished executive I knew. Mom, he said, and the tears started flowing again. Something happened at the company. It turned out that the embezzlement had been discovered by an audit. The company was investigating, and Victoria had thrown him completely under the bus, claiming he had acted alone and that she knew nothing about it. How? How could she do this? Gregory sobbed like a child. I did so much for her. I even ignored my own mother. I had him sit down on a bench and handed him a tissue. In that moment, I felt no anger, only a deep, aching pity. This was the son I had raised, who had lost all sense of judgment trying to please his wife. Gregory, I asked softly, tell me honestly, these past few years, have you been happy? He was stunned, as if he never expected that question. After a long time, he shook his head. No, not happy. Every day feels like walking a tightrope. I'm afraid Victoria will be upset, afraid my boss won't be satisfied. Then why did you live like that? I don't know, he said, holding his head in his hands. I thought that's what a successful life was. A high salary, a luxury condo, the envy of others. I sighed. Gregory, Mom doesn't blame you. This world is full of temptations and distractions. But you have to remember, no amount of money can buy you peace of mind. Gregory looked up, his face a mess of tears. Mom, what do I do? I could go to jail. I looked him straight in the eye. Face it, you made a mistake. You have to accept the consequences and start over. Gregory was silent. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over us. Finally, he took a deep breath. Mom, can you help me find a lawyer? I nodded, and immediately called Mr. Cole. He agreed to take the case, but was frank that the situation was serious, and Gregory would likely face criminal charges. As Gregory was leaving, he suddenly hugged me. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I patted his back, just like I did when he was a little boy. Go on now. Keep in touch. Watching his retreating figure, my heart was a tangle of emotions. As a mother, I should have been furious at his failure, but what I felt most was a sense of release. Maybe only by hitting rock bottom could he truly wake up. I didn't tell Clara about this. I didn't want to affect her studies. But a few days later, Evelyn brought me a newspaper. There was a small article about a corporate executive being investigated for embezzlement. It didn't mention any names, but it was clearly about Gregory's company. Eleanor, Evelyn looked at me with concern. Are you all right? I put down the paper and said calmly, I'm fine. Everyone has to take responsibility for their actions. My son is no exception. Evelyn squeezed my hand. If you need any help, just ask. My son-in-law works in the justice system. Maybe he could offer some advice. I thanked her but declined. Mr. Cole was professional enough. More importantly, I didn't want Gregory to think he could rely on connections to get out of trouble. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. A week later, my calligraphy work was selected for the senior campus's art exhibition. Even though it was just a student showcase, seeing my work framed and hung in a gallery was thrilling. Evelyn took a picture for me and sent it to Clara. Clara immediately video called me. Grandma, you're amazing. I'm going to tell my whole class. No, don't, I quickly stopped her. It's just a few scribbles, nothing to show off. Says who? Clara was practically dancing on the other end of the line. My 78-year-old grandma started learning calligraphy and got into an exhibition in a month. How inspiring is that? Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I couldn't help but laugh. Yes, what did being 78 matter? It's never too late to start something new. The next day, something even more unexpected happened. A local news station somehow heard my story and sent a reporter to interview me. Facing the microphone and camera, my palms were sweating. But as I started talking about calligraphy and my life at the campus, I began to relax. Eleanor, the young female reporter asked, why did you only start learning calligraphy at 78? I thought for a moment and answered honestly. Because for the first time in 78 years, I finally have the chance to live for myself. The reporter was clearly moved by my answer and asked about my family. I hesitated, then simply said my son was busy with work and I had chosen to live at the senior campus. I didn't mention any of the unpleasantness. When the story was published, a photo of my calligraphy and my quote to live for myself were featured prominently. Clara bought several copies of the paper to keep. What surprised me even more was that Gregory's colleagues saw the report. Some of them recognized me and started talking. Mom, Gregory said on the phone, his voice full of resignation. Now everyone at work knows you're my mother. I've embarrassed you. Have you? I asked. No, he said quickly. They all said you're incredible. I could hear the shame in his voice, but also a flicker of pride. Yes, a mother who could live her own life was certainly more respectable than one who could only beg her son for money. A few days later, Clara ran over, full of news. Grandma, Victoria's father had a sudden stroke and is in the hospital. Mom has been running between the hospital and home. She's lost so much weight. My heart stirred. Is it serious? Pretty serious, Clara said with a pout. But it serves her right. She was always saying how useless old people are. Clara, I chided gently. You can't talk about your elders like that. Clara stuck out her tongue. Grandma, you know what the funniest part is? Mom tried to hire a caregiver, but they were either too expensive or unreliable. Now she's taking care of Grandpa herself, and it's only been 2 days, but she's about to have a nervous breakdown. I sighed. Victoria had been spoiled her whole life. How could she handle such hardship? But then I thought, maybe this was her chance to finally understand what it's like to be old and frail. Sure enough, a week later, I received a call from Victoria. It was the first time she had contacted me since my surgery. Her voice was exhausted. Mom, can you recommend a good caregiver? I can't do this anymore, I said calmly. No caregiver, no matter how good, can replace family. Your father needs his daughter, not a stranger. There was a long silence on the other end, and then I heard Victoria start to sob. Mom, I was wrong. I never knew how hard it was to take care of an elderly person. My heart softened a little, but I still said, Victoria, what goes around, comes around. How you treat others is how they will treat you. The words seemed to sting her, and she quickly hung up. But I knew the seed had been planted. Now it was up to her to truly reflect on her actions. That night, I had a dream. Gregory was a little boy again, and I was carrying him on my back to the doctor. He whispered in my ear, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'll carry you too." I woke up to a damp pillow. Life is ironic. When we're young, we give everything for our children, but when we're old, we dare not expect anything in return. Not because they are bad children, but because this era is too rushed. Everyone is just trying to survive, with no time to even stop and check on their parents. But I didn't blame Gregory, and I didn't hate Victoria. Everyone has their own path to walk and their own lessons to learn. And I, at 78, had finally found my own path. A calligraphy brush, a sheet of paper, and a long overdue sense of freedom. My painting and calligraphy piece won first prize in the senior campus exhibition. The news came while I was having tea with Evelyn in the garden. "Eleanor?" Martha from the calligraphy class ran over, out of breath. "Quick, the director is looking for you. Your painting won." I was stunned. "What painting?" I only submitted one piece. "Yes, the one of the autumn chrysanthemums," Martha said excitedly. The judges said it had a wonderful atmosphere and a lot of spirit. Then I remembered. I had casually painted some chrysanthemums during a craft class last week. Evelyn had insisted it was good and that I should submit it. I had just been doodling, copying the flowers in the garden. I never imagined it would win an award. The campus director personally presented me with a certificate and a prize, a beautiful set of calligraphy supplies. The local news station came again, this time doing a feature story with the headline, "The Genius Grandma Who First Picked Up a Brush at 78. After the story aired, my life became a little busier. The senior campus held a small exhibition of my work, and many residents and their families came to see it. Clara brought a few of her friends, proudly introducing me. "This is my grandma." What surprised me the most was that Gregory came too. He stood in a corner of the exhibition hall, dressed in a sharp suit, looking at my work on the wall with a complex expression. When I walked over, he said softly, "Mom, I never knew you had this talent." "I never had time for hobbies when I was young," I said flatly. "I was too busy raising you." Gregory looked ashamed. After a moment of silence, he said, "The case is going to trial soon." My heart tightened. "What did Mr. Cole say?" "He said the worst-case scenario is 3 years." Gregory's voice trembled. "But if I make full restitution and get a letter of leniency, I might get probation." I squeezed his hand. "Do you have enough money?" "I sold my car," Gregory said with a bitter smile. "Victoria won't touch our savings. She says it's for Clara's education." I sighed but said nothing. As he was leaving, he turned back. "Mom, will you come to the hearing?" Looking at his pleading eyes, I nodded. "I'll be there." After he left, Evelyn said thoughtfully, "Eleanor, your son, he really seems to have changed." "I hope so," I replied softly. However, trouble came faster than I expected. 2 days later, Clara showed up at the campus in tears, without her backpack. "Grandma, Mom kicked me out." I quickly brought her into my room. "What happened?" "Tell me slowly." It turned out Victoria had discovered that Clara was still secretly in contact with me. She had flown into a rage, calling Clara a traitor and a backstabber. When Clara talked back, Victoria smashed her phone and threw her out of the house. "Go find your precious grandma then." "Grandma, I don't want to go back." Clara sobbed in my arms. "Mom has become so scary, and Dad is never home." I held her, my heart aching, unsure of what to do. Clara was only 16. She couldn't just drop out of school. But legally, I had no custody rights. As I was worrying, Evelyn knocked. Seeing Clara in tears, she immediately understood. "Eleanor, don't panic. I have a friend who is a lawyer specializing in juvenile cases." With Evelyn's help, we contacted a female lawyer who specialized in family law. After hearing the situation, she said that although Clara was a minor, at 16, she had the right to choose who she lived with. If she was adamant about not going home, we could petition the court to change her guardianship. However, the lawyer added cautiously, "It's always best to try mediation first. You are family after all." I nodded, and sent a text to Gregory, briefly explaining what had happened. He called back almost immediately, his voice weary. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was working late at the office last night. I didn't know." "Gregory," I said sternly, "Clara is very upset right now. She's going to stay with me for a few days. You need to have a serious talk with Victoria." I'll try," he stammered. But Victoria has been under a lot of stress. Her father's condition has gotten worse. I sighed and didn't press him further. After I hung up, Clara had already fallen asleep on my bed, tear tracks still visible on her face. I gently wiped them away, my heart heavy. The next morning, I took Clara to the local high school and arranged for a temporary transfer. The principal was very sympathetic and made an exception, allowing her to start classes immediately while we sorted out the paperwork. "Grandma," Clara told me excitedly after school, "the new students are really nice. They've even seen the news story about you." Seeing my granddaughter smile again, I felt a wave of relief, but it didn't last. That evening, Victoria stormed onto the campus, demanding to take Clara with her. "I'm her mother," she screamed at the reception desk. "You're harboring a minor." The staff couldn't handle her and had to call me. I told Clara to stay in the room and went to meet her with my cane. When Victoria saw me, her eyes were blazing. "Mom, where did you hide Clara?" "She doesn't want to see you," I said calmly. "Victoria, you need to calm down. This is a public place. Making a scene won't do anyone any good." "I don't care," Victoria shouted hysterically. "She's my daughter." "What right do you have?" "The right she gave me when she came to me in tears." I suddenly raised my voice. "Victoria, look at yourself. You're acting like a madwoman. Is this how you show love for your daughter?" My words seemed to stun her. Then she started to cry. "It's all your fault. You turned her against me. Now Gregory is going to jail, my father is dying, and Clara doesn't want me anymore." Seeing her break down, my heart softened. "Victoria, no one wants to break up your family, but Clara is 16. She has a mind of her own. The more you push her, the more she'll rebel." "Then what should I do?" she asked between sobs. "Just let her live with you?" "Is that so bad for now?" I said gently. "She's safe here, and she can continue her schooling. You can focus on taking care of your father. When things have calmed down, you can talk to her properly." Victoria was silent. After a long time, she said in a low voice, "Can she at least come home for dinner on the weekends?" "You'll have to ask her yourself," I said, relieved. "Victoria, the most important things in a family are respect and understanding, not control and possession." As she left, her shoulders were slumped. She looked nothing like the proud, arrogant woman I knew. Back in the room, Clara asked nervously, "Is Mom gone?" I nodded and relayed Victoria's request. Clara bit her lip. "I can go back for a visit on the weekend, but I'm living with you, Grandma." The following days settled into a routine. Clara went to school, and I participated in my classes at the campus. In the evenings, she did her homework while I practiced calligraphy. Sometimes Evelyn would drop by, and the three of us would have tea and chat. On the weekend, Clara went home for dinner as promised. When she came back, she told me, "Mom has changed." She actually cooked dinner herself. It was almost inedible, but she tried. "Dad has lost a lot of weight. He's been organizing his company files constantly." I stroked her hair. "People change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The key is the ability to reflect." 2 weeks later, it was the day of Gregory's trial. Clara and I arrived at the courthouse early and sat in the gallery. Gregory was dressed in a simple shirt and slacks, looking exhausted but calm. Victoria sat next to him, her face pale. The trial went more smoothly than expected. Mr. Cole was well prepared, pointing out that it was Gregory's first offense and that he had paid back the full amount. More importantly, the company had submitted a letter of leniency, something Victoria hadn't expected. "I thought they would prosecute him to the fullest extent," she whispered to me during a recess. "But the CEO said Gregory has always been a responsible employee and that he deserved a second chance." I looked at Gregory in the defendant's box, his head in his hands. I suddenly understood the change in him over the past few weeks. He had been repenting through his actions, earning back trust with his sincerity. In the end, the judge sentenced Gregory to 1 year in prison, suspended for 2 years of probation. When the verdict was read, Gregory cried. He turned and hugged Victoria, then looked over at us, his eyes full of remorse and gratitude. As we were leaving the courthouse, Gregory hurried to catch up with us. "Mom, thank you for coming." I patted his shoulder. "Go home and get some rest." "Mom," Gregory hesitated. Can I come visit you often?" "You're always welcome," I said with a smile. Clara looked at her father, then at me, and suddenly said, "Dad, come to Grandma's for dinner this weekend. She's learned to cook some new dishes." Gregory's eyes lit up. "Okay. I've been learning to cook a few things myself." Watching them interact, a warmth spread through my chest. Maybe there was hope for this family after all. However, the real test was just beginning. That night, Victoria's father took a turn for the worse and needed round-the-clock care. Victoria was stretched to her limit, and Gregory's company was pressuring him to return to work. Although he had kept his job, he was demoted and his salary was cut. He had to work twice as hard. Clara offered to help at the hospital, but she came back looking sad. Mom was so mean to Grandpa. She kept complaining that he was being difficult. Grandpa started to cry. I sighed. Victoria had been spoiled by her father her whole life. She had no idea how to care for someone else. But this was a lesson she had to learn on her own. The next day, I made a decision. I cooked a pot of porridge and some side dishes and went to the hospital. Victoria was clearly stunned to see me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my in-law," I said calmly, handing her the insulated container. "Eat this while it's hot." Victoria's father was lying in the bed, so thin he was almost skeletal. He avoided my gaze when he saw me. I pretended not to notice and simply adjusted his pillow. "How are you feeling, old friend?" He mumbled something I couldn't understand. Victoria stood by, her expression unreadable. For the next few days, I went to the hospital every day. Sometimes I brought food. Sometimes I just sat with her father for a while to give Victoria a break. At first, she was uncomfortable, but gradually, her attitude softened. On the 5th day, she spoke up. "Mom, I'm sorry." I shook my head. "Just focus on taking care of your father." That night, as Victoria walked me to the hospital entrance, she suddenly started to cry. "Mom, I finally understand how hard it is to care for an elderly person. The way I treated you before. It's in the past," I said gently. "Go home and get some rest. You have to be back here tomorrow." Walking back to the senior campus, I felt remarkably at peace. That's just how life is. Some truths can only be understood through personal experience. Victoria needed this ordeal, just as Gregory needed that trial. As for me, my 78 years had taught me the most important lesson of all: forgiveness. To forgive the faults of others, and to forgive my own imperfections. Because in this long life, we are all just learning how to love and be loved. Victoria's father was in the hospital for a whole month before he was discharged. During that time, I went to help almost every day, sometimes with soup I had made, sometimes just to sit for a while. Clara would come on weekends to help feed him and clean him up. Gregory would come straight from work to relieve a weary Victoria. The most surprising thing was how Victoria's attitude was slowly changing, from initial resistance to acceptance, and then to occasional gratitude. One day she even asked me, "Mom, how do you make your porridge so soft? My dad says he only likes the way you make it." I patiently taught her the technique, how to control the heat, when to add ingredients. She listened intently, all of her former arrogance gone. "Mom," Victoria said one evening, "could you move back in with us?" I was taken aback. I never thought she would ask that. "I know we were horrible to you before," she said, her head bowed, her voice choked with emotion. "But these last few weeks, I've been so grateful for your help." I shook my head. "Victoria, I am very happy at the senior campus. This isn't just about what you did. It's about my own choice." She seemed disappointed, but didn't push. The next day, Gregory secretly told me that Victoria had cried for a long time after getting home, saying how thoughtless she had been. "Mom," Gregory hesitated. "Are you sure you won't consider moving back? We can set up a separate room for you." I patted his hand. Gregory, for a family, being together in heart is more important than living under the same roof. After Victoria's father was discharged, he needed long-term care. She and Gregory decided to have him move in with them. For Victoria, who was used to a life of refinement, this was a huge challenge. Mom, she complained during our weekend dinner, Dad gets up several times during the night. I can't sleep, and I'm exhausted at work. Hire a caregiver, I suggested. I did, Victoria sighed. But he only wants me. Yesterday, I lost my temper with him, and later I saw him secretly wiping away tears. I felt terrible. I looked at her tired face and said softly, "That is the responsibility of being a child. When I was your age, I took care of your grandmother for 3 years, until the day she passed." Victoria looked at me, shocked. "You never mentioned that." "Because it was what I was supposed to do," I said calmly. "Our parents raise us when we're small, and we care for them when they're old. It's the natural way of things." My words seemed to have an effect on her. As she was leaving, she suddenly gave me a hug. It was clumsy, but it was the first time she had ever embraced me willingly. 2 weeks later, someone from the community center came to see me. They wanted to invite me to a senior growth seminar to share my story. Me? I waved my hands in refusal. "What do I have to share?" "Eleanor," the young woman said earnestly. "You started learning calligraphy at 78, won an award, and managed to heal your family's conflicts. It's so inspiring. Many of our seniors would love to hear from your experience." With encouragement from Evelyn and Clara, I finally agreed. The seminar was scheduled for the weekend at the community center. I prepared a simple speech, focusing on how I found myself through calligraphy and how I handled my family issues. I never expected that on the day of the seminar, the hall would be packed not just with seniors, but with many young people as well. To my astonishment, Gregory, Victoria, and Clara were also there, sitting in the back row. Standing at the podium, my palms were sweating, but when I saw all the eager faces in the audience, I felt a sense of calm. "I am 78 years old," I began. 3 months ago, I was just an ordinary old woman, waiting every day for my son and granddaughter to visit, making their needs the center of my world. I talked about the humiliation of needing the surgery, about discovering the factory compensation, about rediscovering myself through calligraphy at the senior campus. When I spoke about resolving the conflicts with my son and daughter-in-law, I emphasized the importance of respect and understanding. Our children are not our property, and we are not their burden. I looked at Gregory and Victoria in the audience. Every person is an individual with the right to choose the life they want to live. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Many seniors came up to ask questions, some about calligraphy techniques, others about how to deal with their children. I answered each one patiently, feeling like I had genuinely helped someone. After the crowd dispersed, my family came up. Clara hugged me excitedly. "Grandma, you were amazing. My friends all said you gave a great speech." Gregory's eyes were red. "Mom, I shook my head, signaling that no words were needed. Victoria stood to the side, and then, to my surprise, gave me a deep bow. "Mom, thank you. Thank you for not giving up on us." I helped her up. "We're family. We don't say things like that." On the way home, the 4 of us walked slowly together. The setting sun cast our shadows long on the pavement. Clara held my arm with one hand and Victoria's with the other, chattering about school. Gregory walked beside Victoria, chiming in from time to time. In that moment, I felt that all the suffering had been worth it, because it had taught us to cherish, to understand, and to truly love one another. My 79th birthday was celebrated at the senior campus. That morning, I had just woken up when I heard Clara's voice outside my door. "Grandma, open up." When I opened the door, I was stunned. It wasn't just Clara. Gregory and Victoria were there too. They were holding balloons, a cake, and presents, all of them beaming. "Happy birthday," they shouted in unison. My eyes welled up as I ushered them inside. Clara expertly set the table while Gregory and Victoria started unpacking bags of groceries. "Mom," Gregory said shyly, "I learned a few dishes from the cafeteria chef. You relax today. I'm cooking." "Me too," Victoria chimed in, more cheerful than I'd ever seen her. "I learned how to bake a cake. It might not look great, though." Watching them bustle around the small kitchen, I felt like I was in a dream. A year ago today, I was on my knees begging them for money to fix my leg. And now, Grandma, Clara pulled my hand. Look at Dad's shredded potatoes. Don't they look like chopsticks? I laughed and shook my head. Much better than your grandma ever did. Lunch was a feast. The potato shreds were indeed as thick as French fries, and Victoria's cake was a little burnt, but it was the most delicious birthday meal I had ever had. Gregory had even brought a bottle of red wine, and we all toasted, even giving Clara a tiny sip. Grandma, Clara said mysteriously, I have a present for you. She pulled an envelope out of her backpack. I opened it to find a copy of a university acceptance letter. Clara had been accepted into her dream design school. This is wonderful. I hugged her tightly. I knew you could do it. Mom finally agreed, Clara whispered. She said all that matters is that I'm happy. I looked at Victoria, who looked a bit sheepish. I was too stubborn before. Design is a fine career. Gregory presented his gift next, a painting he had done himself. It was a picture of me teaching him how to make dumplings when he was a little boy. The technique was clumsy, but the sentiment was heartfelt. Mom, he said, his face flushing, I just started learning. It's not very good. I love it, I said, carefully taking the painting, my heart full. Victoria's gift was a cashmere scarf, soft and warm. Mom, fall is coming, and your joints act up. This will keep you warm. I thanked them all and then presented my own gifts. 3 beautifully bound albums. What's this? Gregory asked, opening one and freezing. Inside were selections of my calligraphy from the past year, each piece accompanied by a short description. For Clara, yours says, "A bright future," I explained. It's full of inspirational verses. For Gregory, "A harmonious family is the root of all fortune." And for Victoria, "Of all virtues, filial piety is first." Victoria took her album, and her eyes immediately turned red. Mom, Grandma, Clara suddenly asked, when is your second collection coming out? My classmates are all waiting to buy it. It turned out the senior campus had compiled my calligraphy into a booklet to sell as a souvenir, and it had become quite popular. I hadn't even known. Professor Jensen is a celebrity now, Evelyn said, appearing at the door with a bouquet of flowers. Happy birthday. We all laughed together, a room full of warmth and joy. The candles on the cake were lit, and Clara urged me to make a wish. I closed my eyes and wished for my family to be healthy and happy, and for my story to encourage more seniors to bravely pursue their own dreams. After I blew out the candles, Gregory said, Mom, Victoria and I have discussed it. After Clara goes to college, we want to move to a place nearby, to make it easier to take care of you. I shook my head. You don't need to change your plans for me. I'm very happy here. Just come visit when you have time. No, Mom, Victoria said firmly. We want to be closer to you. This past year, I've learned that family needs to take care of each other. Seeing the sincerity in their eyes, I finally nodded. All right, I would like that very much. After the party, I walked them to the door. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over us. Clara skipped ahead, while Gregory and Victoria walked hand in hand, looking back at me every few steps. Back in my room, I opened my journal and wrote, Today is my 79th birthday, and it is one of the happiest birthdays of my life. Hardship allowed me to find myself, and it taught them how to love again. There is no such thing as a start that is too late, only a surrender that is too early. Closing the journal, I looked out at the starry sky. In 79 years, I had finally understood that family is not a chain, but a harbor. Love is not possession, but respect. And old age is not the end, but a new beginning. Tomorrow I will pick up my brush again and write my story on fresh paper. And my story has only just begun.